Here's my insight about the rebel flag that is being controversial in topic and nature right now. Now, I say the rebel flag, however, that flag is not necessarily the flag of the states that seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. Do your research on where the flag originated if you really want to know. Mind you, this is my opinion, and my mother told me a long time ago that opinions are like blank holes. Everybody has one, and they usually stink. This might take a couple of twists and turns, but I want you to follow me. And I'll tell you how it gets back to the flag. And the flag might have represented a group of thinking that believed that one race was more dominant than others, believed that they were the favored race than another race or two. However, I'm going to tell you how that happened, how this entire thing happened, and how racism and how we are still battling and having conflict currently happened, or how it's happening. Money. Money is the root of all evil, and money truly makes the world go around. Follow me. In Africa, there were tribes that would conquer other tribes, and they would capture members of those tribes, and they would sell them to Europeans, to Spaniards, to people that wanted the free workforce. This is nothing new. In every job, the people that put the things together do not get the praise, do not get the money, they do not get the reward as the people that own what is being put together. Think about a factory. Let's say a shoe factory. Popular shoe brand. You pick any one you choose. I'm not throwing any names out there. The person that puts together each and every shoe, will they make more money or less money than the person that owns the company? Money. Money generates everything. Back to the story. You have the tribes that conquer other tribes. The tribes that conquer are typically the tribes that had better weapons, had better resources, had better finances, better connections. So they were the conquerors. And they conquer this other tribe. And they sell that tribe into slavery. So when these Africans that were tribesmen get to America, they are instantly property. They're not looked at as people. They're not regarded as people. They are not the same as what you see if you are living in America. So you are not looked at as the same. So there's no way for you to be the same. You are never considered the same. Because you are brought over as property. Because you were purchased with money. The root of all evil makes the world go round. Okay. So, those Africans, those Caribbeans, those Spaniards, those people of darker skin that visited the country, the ambassadors, were they treated the same as those that were brought over on the slave ships? No, they weren't. They were treated as emissaries. They were treated as dignitaries. They were treated as royalty because they had money. They had the resources. They had the ability to put themselves above what was coming over as property. And they were looked at as such. Money, once again, separated the people that were not traditional from being treated as those that were traditional. Money. Okay. Now, you have the slaves that were treated as property, that were considered property, that were brought over as property because they were purchased and then they were sold just like you would any other product. So there's no way that they can be considered equal. However, Those that were more valuable were treated different. If you had a special talent, if you were strong, if you could sing, if you could play an instrument, if you had some greater worth, you were treated a little bit differently because you were worth more. You were able to get more money for somebody. So you got treated a little bit differently because you were worth more financially. Coming back to money. How many Southerners were poor? Were they treated the same as the Southerners that had money? No, they were not. Southerners that were poor, Southerners that were lower class, were treated just as slaves in many instances. Because they didn't have money. They didn't have the status. They didn't have the land. They were just the average person. Money separated the classes. Money separates classes. Money separates many, many different aspects of society. Money makes us have this conversation right now. Because if you have money, you can live next to Donald Trump. If you don't have money, it doesn't matter who you are, you still cannot live by Donald Trump. Was the Southern flag was the rebel flag a representation of racism, of socialism, of elitism? Possibly. Was the United States flag, or is the United States flag still that representation of inequality? Under the United States flag, people south and north were hanged, they were beaten, they were killed, they were deprived the right to vote, they were deprived the right to marry, they were deprived basic human rights based on social stature, based on money. So, no flag is more racist or less racist than the other. Every flag belongs to those that have the power. And the power usually comes from those that have the most resources, the most wealth, the most ability to endure a famine, a drought, a war. The money to be able to be on top. Who drives the media? Businesses, advertisers, investors. Media want to be famous. They want more money. So what's going to drive the ratings? Anything that's going to generate money. And what generates money? Conflict, issues, biases, hatred, racism, all these things that get you and I pitted against each other. And we buy into it. So, when you think about any flag, when you think about being mad about something, when you think about racism, when you think about somebody holding you down, think about where it is generated. It's generated from money, from resources, from stature, from wealth. It's not about us that are at the bottom of the totem pole, the lowest end of the ladder. Who fought the Civil War? Were the main battles fought by people that had money? Were they fought by the people that were the landowners? Or did the landowners, northern and southern, both send people to fight for them? The Civil War was not fought by anybody, mostly, that owned slaves, that owned businesses. They fought because they thought their rights were being infringed on. And who told them that? The people that had the money and the power to get the message across. the media of the time, the signage of the time. The poor farmer that was making just enough with his 2 or 3 slaves that were being treated well didn't know anything other than what was given to them. And they could barely read that. So for the most part, Southerners and Northerners are not that much different. But when you throw in money and the desire to get rich, the desire to gain wealth, to gain resources, to gain an empire, and when you throw that in, then you're opening up Pandora's box, essentially. When the goal is to benefit and not help, when the goal is to increase what you have and not increase your fellow man's worth in what they have, then the door of opportunity, the door of understanding, the door of being connected to your fellow man and having society that loves each other and lifts each other up starts to shut. That's my 2 cents.